I still have the piece of wood right here in my pocket, worn smooth as a river stone, a splinter of cedar plank, no bigger than a thumb. I've carried it for 61 years, and every single time my hand finds it in the dark, I remember the night I nearly let the sea decide who I was. Come sit if you like. I won't make you. But I've got a story tonight that I don't tell often, because it still costs me something to tell it. And maybe that's exactly why it needs telling. I was 20 years old, living on the edge of a gray, restless coast, in a house that smelled of tar and wet rope. My father built boats, small ones, honest ones, good enough to feed a family, not grand enough to make one rich. And the summer I turned 20, he finally trusted me to take the boat out alone, to check the lines, to bring in the catch, to prove that his years of teaching hadn't been wasted on a boy who'd rather read by candlelight than mend a sail. I remember the morning it happened with a clarity that frightens me still. The sky had that strange, bruised yellow color, the kind old sailors call a lie of a sky, because it promises calm and delivers ruin. I went out anyway. Pride does that to a young man. It tells him the warnings are for someone else. By early afternoon, the wind turned on me like something with teeth. The waves stopped rolling and started slamming, one after another, cold and relentless. Water finding its way down my collar, into my boots, into the marrow of my bones. I fought that tiller until my palms split open. And still, the sea did what the sea does. It did not care one bit about my effort, my fear, or my father's trust in me. The boat broke apart on the rocks near the point. I remember the sound more than the sight, a groan, then a crack, like something ancient giving up. I swam. I don't remember deciding to swim. I just remember the cold deciding for me. And somehow, hours later, half drowned and shaking, I crawled onto the shingle beach a mile from home. I lay there in the dark for a long while, child, just breathing. And in that breathing, something in me broke that had nothing to do with the boat. I remember thinking quite clearly, I am not built for this life. I remember thinking my father would look at me differently now. I remember wanting more than anything for someone, anyone, to come down that beach and tell me it wasn't my fault and take the weight of it off my shoulders. Nobody came, not that night. The tide came in, and it took what was left of the boat out with it, piece by piece, until there was nothing left to blame but myself and the sea. I want to tell you what I did next, though I confess it took me 3 long days of sitting with my own shame before I did anything at all. On the 4th morning, I walked back down to that same beach, and I began collecting the wreckage, plank by plank. Most of it was ruined beyond use. Some of it the sea had simply swallowed whole, but I gathered what remained and I carried it piece by piece back to my father's workshop, and I laid it all out on the floor like the bones of something I still didn't know how to bring back to life. My father found me there that evening. He didn't shout, "Sweetheart." He didn't need to. He looked at the wreckage, then looked at me, and he said only this: "A boat that never leaves the harbor never breaks, but it also never learns to float." Then he handed me a hammer, and he walked away. I understood slowly over the weeks that followed that no one was going to rebuild that boat for me. not because they didn't love me enough, but because it was never theirs to rebuild. It was mine, my failure, my responsibility, whether I deserved the storm or not. And here is the strange comfort I found buried inside that hard truth. If no one was coming to rescue me from it, then no one was coming to stop me from trying again either. I think about that a great deal now in my old age. We spend so much of our lives waiting for permission or rescue, or some voice from outside ourselves to say, "You're allowed to begin." But my dear, that voice rarely comes. And when it doesn't, most people simply stay on the shingle beach forever, telling themselves the story of the storm instead of building the next boat. Let me tell you about sea glass, if you'll indulge an old man's wandering mind. You've seen it, surely, those smooth frosted little jewels the ocean leaves along the shoreline. Do you know what sea glass was before the sea got hold of it? Broken bottles, shattered jars, sharp, ugly, dangerous shards that someone threw away, thinking them ruined forever. But the ocean did not discard them. It took them in, and for years, sometimes decades, it tumbled them against sand and rock over and over in currents that never once apologized for their roughness. And what emerged was not the same broken thing. It was smoother, softer to the touch, beautiful in a way sharp glass never could be. The very forces that could have cut you had instead polished it into something people bend down to collect. That is what your hardest seasons are doing to you, whether you can feel it yet or not. There's a second thing I learned that year, standing over my father's workbench. He kept on a high shelf an old ship's lantern, its glass yellowed with age. I asked him once why sailors trusted their whole lives to a flame behind a pane of glass. Any strong gust should shatter it. And he told me that the glass in a good lantern isn't ordinary glass at all. It's been heated to its very limit again and again, cooled, then heated once more, until it can withstand exactly the kind of violent wind it was made to face. Untempered glass shatters in a storm. Tempered glass survives the storm and keeps the flame alive inside it for everyone who's steering by its light. Every hard word you've ever received, every rejection, every quiet humiliation you carried home and didn't speak of, these were not proof that you were fragile. They were the tempering. Painful, yes. Necessary. Also, yes. The people who seem unshakable to you now were not born that way, child. They were heated and cooled by circumstance until they could hold a flame steady in weather that would extinguish someone untested. Now, I won't pretend it was simple. There were evenings, more than a few, when I sat with a half-finished plank in my hands and asked myself whether I was being brave or simply foolish for refusing to admit the sea wasn't meant for me. That question followed me for years afterward, and I never found a tidy answer to it, only a kind of instinct I slowly earned. I came to believe it like this: if the ache in you comes from the work itself, from the simple discomfort of doing something difficult and unfamiliar, then that ache is usually asking you to keep going. But if the ache comes from ignoring a warning you already know in your gut to be true, a rotten plank you keep painting over instead of replacing, then that ache is asking you to change course before the sea makes the decision for you again. Learning the difference between those two aches, my dear, took me longer than learning to sail ever did. I don't think that lesson ever fully finishes for anyone. I did rebuild that boat eventually. It took me the better part of a year working evenings by lamplight, my hands clumsy at first and then slowly less so. It was never as fine as my father's boats. The seams showed where I'd learned my lessons, but it floated, and more than that, it was mine, in a way the first boat never had been. because I had paid for it in full, in patience and blistered palms and long nights of doubting myself. I want you to hear this clearly, wherever you're sitting tonight, whatever wreckage is scattered on your particular shore. You are allowed to grieve what broke. Sit with it as long as you honestly need to. I sat with mine for 3 days, and I don't regret a single hour of it. But grief has a shoreline, my dear, and eventually the tide will ask you to either stay on the beach or start gathering planks. You do not need someone to arrive and repair this for you. I know that's a hard thing to hear, because some nights we want rescue more than we want almost anything else in this world. But you were never given this particular storm because you were weak. You were given it because something in you is being tempered for a flame you haven't lit yet. Start small, one plank, one honest conversation you've been avoiding, one small act of courage that costs you something today and pays you nothing guaranteed in return. That is the only kind of courage that has ever mattered, the kind offered without proof that it will work. And when you finally set that rebuilt little boat back into the water, and you will, sweetheart, I promise you that, you'll find it carries you differently than the first one ever could have. Not because it's perfect, because you know in your bones exactly what it cost to build. I should let you rest now, but before you go, reach into your own pocket wherever you are and see if you can't find some small, smooth thing to carry with you. A reminder that the roughest water in your life might just be shaping you into something the old glass could never have become on its own. And if you'd like, come find me again sometime. I'll leave a lamp burning by this window, and when you're ready to talk about your own wreckage or your own rebuilding, I'll be right here, same as always, glad for the company.